Welcome to episode 52 of the Champagne Comedy Podcast, where we talk about the best Australian comedy show from the 90s ever made, Frontline, and other D-Generation comedy tidbits. My name is Matt, and joining this podcast today is Alison, Daniel, Kim, and Prue.
Hi. Hello.
Welcome back, Prue. And we also have a very, very special guest reviewer. He's back for the second time round. We actually had him for the first season of the Champagne Comedy Podcast, and we've managed to convince him to come back on again. And you may recognise him from many other satirical comedy shows or that just pop up around, especially this one.
Ah, yes. Hungry Beast.
Oh, yeah.
Cool scene.
I paid for the full rights to play for the song, so... Yes, it is a Rational Fear podcast host and TV funny man, Daniel Litch.
Oh, yes.
Hey.
Hello.
Thank you so much. It's been a long time since I've been a funny man on TV, but I'll take it. I'll take it, you know. Take whatever you can get these days.
Mate, and you are a huge Frontline fan too, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'm a massive Frontline fan. Watching this week's episode again, I was triggered by the opening titles of the show and how it, reappeared a few times throughout the episode, and it just really took me back to getting home from school, staying up, waiting for Frontline to arrive on television. I could see myself in my parents' house watching it. Like I felt like a little kid again. I used to have a little tiny television about mum and dad had this portable TV. It couldn't have been any bigger than an iPad in terms of the screen. Maybe half the size of an iPad. And I remember it was so heavy. I used to lug it into the bath and watch Frontline in the bath. So yeah, because I wanted to relax and be into it, and just kind of get in the right headspace to enjoy the qualities.
Let it wash over you.
So this is like when it's actually on live. It wasn't a recording. You actually watched it live while you were in the bath.
Well, no, this is not in the because back in those days I would have had to record it on a VHS.
Yeah, you can't bring the VHS to the bathroom.
I didn't move the VHS into the bath. I moved the portable television into the bath and waited till I guess it was like 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday or something like that on the ABC, so I could consume it in the bath. Yeah, it was a real triggering moment for me watching this episode. It was great.
So, we mentioned Hungry Beast. I partially bring it up because I do actually happen to have a copy of it.
Blockbuster.
On DVD. Yeah, $1 from a Salvos, and it's ex stock from the Blockbuster in Stirling, which is Adelaide Hills.
Oh
so
my God.
this is essentially a copy of Hungry Beast on physical media in a video shop wrapping. So it's like a time capsule in a time capsule in a time capsule.
That's amazing. Daniel, if you could do me a favor and snap the DVD in half, there's some very, very questionable material on there that shouldn't see the light of day.
I suppose Hungry Beast may be the closest thing to current affairs that you may have worked in. Was Andrew Denton anything like Brian Thompson?
No, he wasn't at all. Like he was a very different character. I've actually worked on lots of television shows, and at Channel 9 I worked on Funniest Home Videos, and I got to say that I've met those EPs of those shows on commercial current affairs, and they are very similar. Yeah, very, very similar. There's a bloke called Tim Cleary who I think still works at Channel 7. He is brutal. Like Bruno's character is so wonderful and warm, but these guys who work at that level are sick. They're sick people. They got immense pressure coming down from them from the network. They got immense pressure coming up from them from their staff, and they are, to quote Tom Wamsgams a pain sponge. You know, they are, and as when you're an executive producer, and I've been an executive producer twice on TV shows, 3 times on TV shows, you are that. You are absorbing the pain from above, and you're absorbing the pain from below. And when you're working in a very high stressful situation like current affairs television, that pain is amplified because it's so cutthroat amongst and competitive amongst. Back in the day when you had several on at the same time, that time slot was ultra competitive because you're literally competing in the same genre, in the same time zone, on different networks for the same audience. And so that Today Tonight / a current affair competitiveness, the people who ran those shows were real assholes.
Wow.
So, you know, the EP in this season of Frontline is such a warm character and warm, clever character who is very empathetic and very smart. And whereas I think the folks who I have had experience working with in those kinds of shows, very short tempered, very not great at pressure, not great, don't have great people skills. And I would say Andrew Denton is not one of those people. Andrew Denton is he has very high standards. If you don't meet those standards, he would be very upset with you. But thankfully, we no longer have to work with each other, and he is an absolute delight and a good friend of mine. So it's a real it's a real privilege to have friends like Andrew.
One of the things I liked about Hungry Beast was that there was only one simple mission, reading off the back of the DVD cover. Tell us something we don't know.
Tell us something we don't know. And the world discuss was like another one. Like it was just one of those things where it was like, well, we should just try and... We had this idea in Hungry Beast called the fuck me moment, and where every story we created had to have a fuck me moment. That is, oh, fuck me, I didn't know about that. Fuck me, that's interesting. Fuck me, you have to see this. That is the fuck me moment is kind of the thing we would always walk around the office going, oh, does it have a fuck me moment? Doesn't have a fuck me moment. It's got to go. We need a fuck me moment. Anyone got a fuck me moment? So, that's like language that we kind of dealt with in the Hungry Beast office, and that's kind of permeated through all of the alumni's work since. We still talk about it, when we're commenting on other people's work. Our colleague, our former colleagues' works. It was like, well, that was a real fuck me moment. So it's one of those bits of lexicon around the office that are kind of really stuck along with our continuing careers and creating things. So I try to create fuck me moments in the work I do. Sometimes I'm too lazy to, but and good enough, near enough is good enough. But when you're winding up the rubber band to make something impactful, you're always searching for that fuck me moment to hit go and unleash upon the world.
I've got nothing. I'm speechless with that. That's a great concept of any type of show.
There you go. Well, we got the fuck me moment for the episode. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah. Exactly. Fuck me. That was good.
I'm looking forward to finding out what the fuck me moment is in the various Frontline stories that they cover. Maybe you can point that out to us.
Well, you as people who are part of this podcast know structurally there are many. There's one at the start, there's a hook, and then of course there's being working dog, there's always a great punchline. And so you don't often see that in comedies these days, where comedy is self-contained in 26 minutes. Can I just say how much I enjoyed watching a comedy show that took 26 minutes? Like any show these days you have to stream, it's always 50 minutes or an hour something, and it's like, this is a fucking task. It is taking forever. What a joy it was to watch a network broadcast comedy show had a beginning and middle and end within 26 minutes, and the discipline in the writing it takes to create that is fantastic. And Working Dog aren't afraid to put a button on it and not leave you hanging for the next episode, because back in those days you just had to end it solidly and get out, and now you need to end it and then start the next episode in the last 30 seconds to hook people in to the next episode. Like, it's such a different kind of world we live in now in terms of narrative structure.
Yeah, it is something to really appreciate, that there's there's not a lot of fat on this episode that would need to be trimmed.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's funny you say that, actually, because just going through the script book, there's quite a lot of cut lines in this episode. And I think what they've had to do is they realized they were running over. So you can see in the script book, they've had to shave off, a couple of lines at the start of a scene or a line or two in the middle of a scene, and actually when you sort of watch the episode and you read the book and you see what they've cut, you think, yeah, okay, they have actually cut off the fat and made this a really lean 26 minutes. So it's quite interesting to go through the book if you can find a copy of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's part of it, is like, you got to, as we say in the business, you got to kill your babies. I'm sure there were some pearlers they had to cut.
Maybe not. I think they were probably right to cut the scenes that they did, but there are one or two interesting ones that I might mention a bit later when we get to it.
Okay, great.
Cool. Speaking of trimming the fat, unless someone else has got anything, we won't even bother with back chat.
There's
straight into the guide.
No one's emailed us.
No, the only thing I was going to say was that I had to kind of twist my own arm and had to create a Threads account for the champagnecomedy.com site.
No.
Just to, yeah. But that's nothing important. There's so many social media things now. I'm just trying to establish an account for every single one so we can cover at least a username basis.
There definitely needs to be some consolidation now, doesn't there? There's too many of them.
I'm starting to feel burnt out from social media altogether. But honestly, I just feel like throwing in the towel, just going, well, screw it. How about we just send letters back again? Australia Post, I'm sure we'll love that.
Yeah, we can become a photocopied fanzine or something.
Yeah, PO Box 9994 in your capital city.
Yeah, exactly.
Just fax something over.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus!
Daniel Genie's program guide.
All right. There wasn't much outside of the program guide looking in the Age Green Guide and the Sydney Morning Herald Guide. The only thing of note is that tomorrow night, Channel 7 has extended Denton, starring Andrew Denton. I know it's a very Denton-heavy episode already. They're extending his show to 90 minutes and will begin at the earlier time of 9:30 with the Denton Taste Test, which he calls, quote, a special cheap ratings grab, unquote. A tabloid version of the usual show, it promises UFOs, Culkin's disease, and footage from, quote, the only piece of television which has ever made me physically nauseous, unquote. Howard Stern's New Year's Eve beauty pageant. So,
oh, God. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. It's just
I'm not intrigued.
Anyhow, to the program guide proper, starting on Channel 7 in Melbourne at 7:30 was another episode of Talk to the Animals. But sorry, did I say Sydney or Melbourne just then?
Melbourne.
In Sydney, it was another repeat of MacGyver. According to the listing here, MacGyver battles an eccentric scientist whose bizarre biological experiments go out of control and threaten the environment. So again, it's not really proving all of those MacGruber parodies wrong, I think. There's some sort of disaster about to happen and he's got to save it in 30 seconds with, a paperclip and a bunch of chewing gum.
There have been millions of dollars spent and thousands of hours of politicians traveling around to try and fix the environment. If they can't do it, MacGyver definitely can.
He's the only one.
He needs to get on with it then, doesn't he?
You should get him on your show.
MacGyver. Yeah, I should get MacGyver on the show.
Over on Channel 9 at 7:30 is Murphy Brown. They've finished up with Season 6 and they've gone into repeat. So they've gone all the way back to Season 3, Episode 10, titled Trouble in Sherwood Forest.
It was so confusing when they used to go back and forth on series and you could never tell where you were in the timeline. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, you couldn't get away with it. Now, the only TV show I can think of that used to do that really regularly would have been Friends, I think, where you would just tune in and you wouldn't be sure whether it was a new one or an old one. Thankfully, it was a funny one. So in this episode, Murphy may have to eat her words when she supports Corky's notion that a dinner party would provide sustenance for her affection-starved marriage. Then at 8 o'clock, we've got Frasier, Season 1, Episode 17, titled A Midwinter Night's Dream. Niles asks Frasier for advice about his marital problems. Oh, dear. That Maris, who you never ever see.
It's interesting doing a 94 TV guide because actually all the good US series are on. You know, when back in the Late Show, it was like just crap. But now we've got some good quality television.
This was 1994, and so far, all three shows in the guide that you said, with MacGyver, Murphy Brown, and now Frasier, have either come back 30 years later or are about to return.
You are quite right, actually. Yeah, Frasier's the only one which
Is about to.
is about to, at time of recording. And certainly, there is a bit of a difference between Mondays in 94 and Saturdays in 92, 93. It's sort of it was very movie heavy on a Saturday. So whereas there's certainly a lot more stability on a Monday. I'm going to jump over to the ABC. Later on tonight is Season 2, Episode 4 of the British black comedy series Murder Most Horrid, starring Dawn French. It's titled We All Hate Granny. 75-year-old Lily Gibbons lives a precarious existence with her resentful daughter and her unemployed son-in-law. So, I know. You can hang on to that after checking out Stuart Littlemore mention Frontline in Media Watch. But I don't think any of those can hold a candle to what's on Channel 10. It's good old Healthy, Wealthy and Wise.
Yes!
Listen to this lineup. Ronnie Burns shows how to convert the empty space under your roof into an attractive living area. Peter Werrett reports on seatbelts. Jim Brown visits Mossman Gorge. Ian Hewitson prepares a popular pasta dish. Ross Greenwood tells parents how they can teach their children the value of money. And Tonya Todman gives a chest of drawers an unusual finish.
Oh, God. Does she cover it with, like, ribbons and glitter and stuff?
Mm.
And contact.
Oh, God. I could just imagine this horrific thing that she's going to make.
And then you can store it up in the spare room or the rooftop.
Roof, yeah.
And how's the way Huey only ever cooks a pasta or a ragu?
It's a popular pasta dish, Prue. I mean, what's it going to be? Carbonara, spag bowl, puttanesca if you're lucky.
I'm thinking that
Hewitson never ever decided to cook anything without carbs, did he? He was always carb heavy, that guy. Come on, guys, let's make a Mediterranean salad. No, we need some carbs.
There was always a lot of oil involved as well. Just oil, just everywhere.
Yeah, and sun-dried tomatoes.
Did he deep fry salad?
It was the 90s, man. Had to have sun-dried tomatoes.
I think the only one which still would be good for these cost of living times would be converting the empty space under your roof. Yeah, get rid of those pink bats. There's room up there to sublet. Come on. All right, that's enough. Let's get into the episode.
Can I say this is one of my favourite segments of the show? I just wanted to quickly jump in.
Yeah.
It's like a time warp.
If you ever, like, for the listener at home, I listen. And if you ever question the validity of this segment, don't. It is a real trip down memory lane. It is just absolutely delightful. I can see myself in the bath watching all of these.
I'm just worried about how you never got electrocuted.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds really, really dangerous, actually.
It was on the bench. It was on the bench.
But you were like a trailblazer. Everyone's just bringing their phone into the bath now, and you were one of the originals. Yeah.
Always ahead of my time. There's a problem being ahead of the bell curve.
Was it a colour portable TV or only black and white?
I'm glad you asked. It was a colour Toshiba.
Oh, nice.
It had a lovely silver plastic finish on the front, and it was easily about 6 kilos. It was very
Someone
heavy.
had a layover in Hong Kong back in the day.
Duty-free purchase. But as we keep complaining or Prue about the quality of Frontline videos on our huge 4K TVs, having it on that small portable Toshiba probably was pretty much an HD experience.
It's probably the only way to watch it.
Yeah.
I feel ripped off.
Because Frontline was filmed on Super 8, right? Like it was filmed on like a shitty.
Yeah, apart from
high-eight
the broadcast bits when they were in the studio.
It was a high-eight video camera, and then it was transferred to film, and then back to video to achieve that craptastic look.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much for all that. And now, Dan, if you put your eyes towards the chat, you are going to introduce or do the Mike Moore impression, if you are willing to do so.
If you don't want to do a Mike Moore impression, Dan, you could do either a Robbie McGregor impression, the guy who introduces your podcast, Rational Fear, or an Alan Jones impression.
Oh, Alan Jones.
Oh, yeah, take your pick.
Take your pick.
Oh my God!
All right, so
well,
what
I'm
we'll
moving.
what we'll do
I'm buying
is-
a house around the corner from Robbie McGregor, so let me give Robbie a go.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to cue the theme, and there'll be a pause for you. So here we go. Right.
Adult themes.
SBS advisors.
Subs, doms, pimps and daddies.
Okay, here we go. 3, 2, cue in.
Hello, I'm Dan Illich. This is Frontline, Season 1, Episode 12, Judge and Jury. Broadcast on Monday, July 25th, 1994. Viewing is recommended by mature audiences.
Well done. Well done, especially being put under pressure like that.
So much pressure.
Without notice.
Well done, my friend. Well done. And so, how much do we owe in Robbie McGregor royalties?
He works for me for free. Lucky me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, as Robbie or Dan explained, it is Season 1, Episode 12, Judge and Jury. The synopsis of this is Brooke has done a series on a priest accused of rape, and Mike goes up against a cross-network promotion. During a story, Marty unwittingly wipes out an entire genus of butterfly.
Whoops.
Genus.
Genus, sorry. Yep. I was just trying to play on that, kind of like repertoire and repartee. But I wasn't sure if anyone was going to get it. So, yeah, pretty intense. So that's directly off the DVD case, by the way. But after a series of failed phone calls with this episode at the very beginning, Marty shows Kate the method on how to get people to come on the show for an interview.
Hello, Mrs. Zitas. It's Martin DeStasio here from Frontline. I'm terribly sorry to hear about your son. And we wouldn't normally disturb you in this time of grief. But we feel it's vital that something is done about the whole issue of pool fencing. And, well, you're in a position to do this, Mrs. Zitas. Well, I think it's the least we could do as a tribute to Simon. Yes, I do think it'll make a difference. Of course, it's entirely up to you, and I think people would understand if you didn't want to raise awareness of the dangers and... yeah. Well, what about tomorrow? Well, after the funeral. What, say about 2? Well, we'll see you then. Oh, and I think if anyone else rings about an interview or anything like that, just say no. I think you're doing more than enough already, Mrs. Okay, well, we'll see you then. Bye-bye. They're expecting us about 2.
If he only was as calm as that when he's telling for the photocopier to work properly, I reckon everything would have been fine.
Yeah. Maybe he needs to kind of manipulate the photocopier into working as he has done there, because that was very much a masterclass on how to do it. Essentially, you've just got to tug at the heartstrings of the victim, and they'll say yes.
And that's the way he goes, pick a wog, they always talk.
Jeez.
This is just classic strategy. This is what happens. I've been on the end of those phone calls as media wanting to talk to me about stuff, and the way they kind of say in this episode, oh, and I wouldn't worry about talking to anybody else. You know, don't talk to That's happened to me a few times, and it happened to me before I was really in media, and so I didn't quite understand what they were getting at. What I do know now is, it was a clear catch and kill operation. They didn't want you to talk to anyone else because their competitor would get the story. Next time that would happen, if this is good advice for anyone who's in the middle of a media storm, ask for money. Like, they've got money to give you. So say, yeah, well, actually, this other network's actually offering me $5,000. So I'm going to talk to them. And then sure enough,
Harry and Miller method.
you might get some money from the network you're talking to. That's my hot tip for anyone under pressure in crisis communications right now.
But yeah, Marty has had so much experience at this, as we saw quite a few episodes ago, talking to the family of the crocodile attack victim. And yeah, appearing to sort of be on your side, but only appearing to be.
Yeah, it didn't take long for Kate to actually understand the way to go about it, and I think very soon afterwards, she's the one who's just really kind of raring for it. Whereas at the beginning, she's like, "Oh, Brian just makes me call all these people, and he looks at all the car crash stories, all the horrible tragedies, and I've got to make these horrible phone calls." Then she sees how it's done, and yeah. She gets a little bit confident.
She becomes the master manipulator. Although it's a classic example of open versus closed kind of questions, isn't it? It's like, can we interview you? Okay, no, okay, bye.
But you know what I see from it though? Every time Kate does this or any similar thing in a similar scenario throughout any of the episodes, it's ever since the episode of Frontline of the art of gentle persuasion, I straight away now see, that's that gentle persuasion now.
Yeah.
So each episode's teaching a little thing every little time.
I think we might have identified the first fuck me moment, which is actually you. We're kind of realizing here how TV's being made. It's this kind of manipulative phone call. So that you can I don't know. We need a sound effect, maybe just a tick for fuck me number one.
Time for the sound effects.
Yeah, that'll do. That's a good one.
Well, meanwhile, Emma has lined up a thrilling story for Marty on the 10-year anniversary of the butterfly enclosure. Yes, how thrilling is that? But Jan is trying to convince Mike to do an interview with an actress on the show, but Mike sees it as a cross-promotion and he refuses. Geez, there's Mike's standards in the play there.
Yeah, except when they say, "Oh, we'll tell Miss D Cup we don't want her services anymore," and then he goes, "Oh, well, hang on, maybe I will." It just so I kind of like that line there from Brian. He's just he knows he can reel Mike in with, "Oh, she's quite hot."
He's like, "Oh, I don't want to be all precious about it." No.
Kate shows Brian her perfect hit rate with the phone calls, and Marty does his butterfly report. However, once Stu turns on the light...
Okay, lights, thanks. Rolling. Christine, how long have you been curator here at the butterfly... What?
Look at power! Right! Turn the power off!
Whoops.
House of Serenity.
I reckon it's all on that zookeeper, really. She should have been far more aware of what's going on.
100%. Absolutely. I agree. Yeah, she should have known that was going to happen, for sure.
This sort of seems like one of those scenarios which, like, plausibly may have actually happened and been passed on from, from journo to journo, like, newsroom lore.
One of the Logies kind of war stories that they'll share.
That's the phrase, war story.
Brian's pissed off, especially that Marty has wiped out the rare species of moth. But, Brooke has info on a woman who claims she was raped by a priest, and Emma asks if he's been charged. But Brian is more interested in getting an interview with the woman, so Kate is on the case and manages to get her across the line. That scene sets the main plot of it all, of this priest, which as soon as you think anything to do with religion, they're guilty until proven innocent.
It's interesting going over this issue all these years later. It's like, clearly they set it up as a story where the story's been implanted by a psychiatrist, but that whole thing of like, oh, they're innocent until proven guilty. Well, all the statistics show that these cases hardly get to court. When they get to court, they hardly win, it's just, it sort of doesn't land very well today when you sort of see that you can't just rely on the legal system.
Well, George Pell is, I guess, the obvious and very recent example of that. But yeah, there was a thing about sort of 30 odd years ago where, various psychiatrists or psychologists had, uncovered these repressed memories, and it turns out they weren't actual memories at all. They were things implanted by the psychiatrist, and that in itself was a scandal. You don't hear so much about that these days because that doesn't really happen anymore. But sadly, there are still priests and other religious leaders from all denominations who are doing these things and not getting what they deserve for it, sadly.
Rob Stitch is a very well-renowned Catholic, and we know where he's writing from.
Yeah, they all are. They definitely all are.
Body of Christ, that will be nice.
Depends what type of body. Anyway,
moving
on.
Move on. Yep. So Emma gets a call, and it's Shirley Strawn who wants to be interviewed. Well, not Shirley on the phone. Shirley wants to be interviewed to promote his new album, but Mike refuses, and turns out it was Gudinski.
I like the I'm sorry, Mr. Gudinski. And also the show that they're trying to cross promote was called Wouldn't It Be Lovely?
It'd be lovely.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
That's where we get to our cut scene.
Don't tell me they cut more of Shirl. That would have been tragic.
No, it's not Shirl. So the scene where Jan is in the office with Brian trying to convince Brian to get Mike to do this interview with Shirley Strawn, and that's where we hear about Shirl's upcoming maintenance or carpentry series, Wouldn't It Be Lovely? And there's about sort of 6 cut lines before that. And the meeting with Jan and Brian actually starts out about Jan says, I've spoken to the zoo. They were quite upset, but we'll hose it down. We'll offer to do a story next time a new baby monkey is born or something. And then she says, actually, that would make a good piece for our weatherman. And Brian says, Mike's mate. And Jan says, have you seen his latest proposal? And Brian says, no. And then she starts talking about how he wants to push his 1-hour documentary about the urban fox. Now, throughout the series, we've heard Jeff talking about his urban fox documentary and how, he's feeling really hopeful that it's going to make it to air, and various people have been really positive about it and that. And basically what's revealed is that, they're not ever going to air this urban fox thing. But that sort of becomes relevant later in the episode when Jeff and Mike are talking about the urban fox thing. Except my theory, as I said before, is that I think that Working Dog realized they needed to cut stuff because they were running over time, so they cut this bit. But actually, you don't feel you're missing any information there from that scene that I've just read out, because they
repeat it.
Thing, yeah, exactly. It's been throughout the whole series of just been bubbling away as a kind of plot that just runs through everything. So yeah. Anyway, that's the first bit. There's another cut bit later, which is kind of interesting. But actually, if you go through this script, there's an awful lot of just sort of single or double cut lines that just get cut out, I think, just to shave time off. And it's quite interesting to have a look at them.
I was quite tickled by the concept of a documentary on the urban fox. I'd be fascinated by that.
It kind of would be interesting. That's the thing. But obviously, in 1994, they thought, oh, this will be boring. No one will watch that.
I hosted ABC Sydney breakfast for some time, and I got to tell you, fox sightings during my tenure were like number one catnip for all the listeners. They would call up. They'd want to tell you where they saw a fox. They want to tell you where the foxes were. In Bondi, I house sat for a friend who had chickens in Bondi Beach. And she said to me, oh, just be careful of the fox. I'm like, what? I'm in Bondi Beach. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And sure enough, the dogs were yapping at 3 a.m. And there was the fox prowling up and down the driveway trying to get into the chicken coop. And I'm like, fuck, I'm never house sitting this place again because I got to be on Fox Watch. Forget it.
Foxes are right. Don't worry about foxes. There's foxes near me, and they kind of run away from you if they see you coming, because
they're native to that land. I don't know. It's weird seeing them down the beach in Australia. They're very weird.
Yeah, two sets of friends who've had foxes eat their chickens and kill their chickens. And even just last week, our security camera picked up a fox in our garden in southern Sydney. So really, really prevalent.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
You
a
ever heard
Fox
them
meme
having
moment.
sex?
No, I have not.
I have.
What does it sound like, Alison? Do tell us.
Is it like cats?
I'm not doing it. It is. It's like.
It's a bit.
It is like
Yeah.
cats, actually, but it's worse than that. It's incredibly loud. It's unbelievable. And the problem is, you know, in the summer you've got your windows open because it's so hot, so you can't shut the window to stop hearing it.
Yeah, so
you just got to let them get on with it until they shut up.
It's your fox me moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
It absolutely. We've already had that.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a couple of minutes to cut, Matt. Spin-off Fox fucking podcast.
As Dan said, it is catnip to people. They love talking about urban foxes.
Yeah. Well, we all just spent 10 minutes talking about it, so there you go.
What do you think? Give us a call. So Jan pushes Shirley's album interview as well, revealing the ultimate reason why behind it all.
Apparently, the network are very interested in talking to Mr. Strawn about doing a new lifestyles program for next year.
Does one?
Yes, but that is a home maintenance program, and he does a carpentry segment. What we want to do is a whole series based on carpentry called Wouldn't It Be Lovely? Mr. Strawn's manager has let it be known that some favourable publicity might just be the sweetener we need.
Well, at the time of this episode going out, he's seen every Wednesday at 7:30 on Channel 9 in this show.
Our house is a very, very, very fine house.
Doesn't it scream 90s lifestyle?
It's so bland, isn't it?
You can see. You can see the titles in your head, can't you? With people working on a house and then it going through the front door.
Yeah.
I preferred the Better Homes and Gardens ones because they had more lyrics in it. Because getting so much better all the time. Getting
Burke's
better.
Backyard. Burke's Backyard was better.
Yeah, jeez. We don't talk about...
No, I'm sorry.
We got Eddie Perfect to write the theme song for At Homeland together, and I said, Eddie, is it possible, like, could we give you like another $1,000 and like every couple of weeks you just send us a new theme song that's slightly different? He's like, yeah, okay. And so we had like 4 different variations of the theme song when Eddie could get around to making. We only had 8 episodes, but I think we had 4 different theme songs across At Homeland together. So it was great for the keen listener out there.
It was worth
based
the effort.
on
It was
Better
definitely
Homes and Gardens.
worth the effort. Yeah, and it really did reference all those 90s programs, so I enjoyed that aspect of it as well.
We're in the office and Mike sprays fly spray around Marty when he retaliates with a rolled up newspaper. Fop, fop, fop. No one with... fine.
It wasn't wet newspaper, Matt.
It wasn't wet, damn it. But
I love Mike's reaction to this.
Yeah, me too.
I was doing a clever joke and you were just being violent.
That
Childish.
was good.
Brilliant.
It was such a Telstra versus Optus moment.
It really was.
Emma gives Marty his next story, which is 2 blokes saved a crew from a sinking yacht. So that establishes that story arc, with more of that to come. But Brooke does arrive with footage from interviewing the potential rape victim, but the priest has refused the interview. But she does play some hidden camera footage from the confession booth. Anyone know what confession booth it was?
Nah.
No, haven't been to one since 1987. So
There's a line there where the EP says, have you got audio on that? And he said, no, we'll just run it without audio. And what's interesting about that is that, he said, we'll run it in the promo. And what's interesting about that is the thing that is illegal in the Surveillance Devices Act in New South Wales and Victoria is the audio recording without somebody somebody's consent. So you can record people's video without somebody's consent, but you can't record audio without their consent. So that's the reason why they ran in the promo, didn't run in the story, because they can just run the pictures and that's fine. But you'll notice...
So that would have been perfectly legal.
Would have been perfectly legal, yeah. So you'll notice that these shows, when they do hidden camera stuff, they do it outside of South Australia, New South Wales and Victoria. So they do it in Queensland mostly, where the Surveillance Devices Act doesn't really exist. So when you see a hidden camera story on a current affairs TV show, often it will be done in Queensland, because the Surveillance Devices Act is something a little bit different there. And you can record the audio and you can broadcast it without somebody's consent.
So
Come on, Queensland.
Are there exceptions if something is in the public interest? Where you
there's
can
no
use it?
there's no public interest exception. So it's kind of interesting, like in this digital world we're in, like Friendly Geordie's putting out that video recently with John Barilaro, the former Deputy Premier of New South Wales. The audio of him kind of bragging about this new job, he put that in his video. Technically, he could go to jail for that because it's against the Surveillance Devices Act. And it's a bit murky as to who goes to jail, whether it's the person reporting on it, or if a journalist reports on the reporting of it, or if the person who recorded it. There's different levels of punishment for that. So, yeah, there's no public interest element to it. If you've got if you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, then you should assume you're not being recorded. It's just one of those things. It's a weird thing, and it's a law that allows a lot of bad stuff to kind of get away and unpublished. And you may remember when was it Gingell and Packer had their fight, and it was Gingell and Mark and Carl Stefanovic in the back of an Uber, and the Uber driver had recorded the conversation, but Women's Day published it as a transcript.
No. It wasn't recorded. The taxi driver just had a very, very, very good memory.
That's it. Yes, so but it was recorded because it was this transcript of what it said, and so the taxi driver told it from quote unquote memory. So that's how they kind of got away with that. But you never heard the recording. But there was this epic transcript in the Women's Day because they had the recording.
Now you could possibly go, this is what ChatGPT would have thought they would have said. Wow, that is interesting. No pun, but that is a fuck me moment for me anyway. Wow, because I knew.
Yeah, we should be very careful because there could be recording devices in each of our rooms right now.
By the way, did I get everyone's permission to record right now on this podcast?
Yeah, you have permission.
Yeah,
I'm in a hotel, so there might be something somewhere around.
Matt, I've actually.
I think it's all based around the reasonable expectation of privacy. So
Matt,
the very fact that we have all been invited to a podcast means we're safe. I think.
Matt, I've actually been offered $1,000 by another podcast. So,
do you take douche coin?
No, because I'm not a douche.
Brian has labelled the priest as guilty, but Marty and Emma are having second thoughts. So Kate weaves her magic and manages to get the priest over the line. Now, with the art of gentle persuasion, Brian convinces Mike to interview Shirl.
Story, mate. It's a bit political.
Oh, Brian, you always forget. I was the political reporter at the Perth 7:30 report.
Right, well, the PSA have just released the PSA, the Prices Surveillance Authority.
Oh, yeah, PSA, yeah, sure.
Yeah, they've just released a report saying we pay far too much for CDs.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Bought the best of Enya last week. How much do you think it cost?
$40.
No, 28.
Well, it's still a lot.
Oh, it's a lot.
Still a lot. I thought we should look into it, maybe do an interview with someone from the Prices Surveillance Authority.
PSA,
Yep. Rope in a few of the local musicians.
Why don't we do a debate, Brian Thompson?
Michael Moore, what a great idea.
It's a great idea, isn't it?
Are you free to do a pre-record tomorrow, Albo?
Yeah. I'll skip Jim.
No, just love how he makes it all so easy to get him over the line to interview Shirley.
You'll be pleased to know that the price of a physical copy of The Very Best of Enya has come down. It's now $22.99 from JB Hi-Fi.
God, I can get that cheaper at Salvos. I still
definitely.
troll Salvos.
It's free on the internet. Can we just have a special moment to observe Mike Moore's posters in his office? Like, I know they've been there forever, but they seem to sort of be multiplying because I haven't watched in a while. So it's like, oh, hang on, now he's got like this one of the human body or something. And it's just like he's gone to the newsagents in the 90s and picked up those poster book study guides for like year 10s.
Those little things
all over the office. He's such a basic guy.
It was like school projects, and you had these little turnstiles, and you could kind of choose what you wanted. There was a cardboard kind of cover. There was a poster of all these fun facts that you could use. You could cut out pictures and put them in your scrapbook.
The newsagents. It was a plethora of that sort of thing.
With the CDs, does anyone remember, it might have been in the late 90s when it started happening, to drive down the price of buying CDs, when they started to import, or the threat of them, of the
parallel importing. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I do remember that. Yeah. And people were scared and thinking, oh, it's going to drive everyone out of business. But, people wanted cheap CDs. So, for me as a teenager in the mid 90s, it was fine. We used to rent CDs
bloody oath
as well.
We were absolutely the generation who were ripped off, right, from word go. Like, we were spending so much money on all of this physical media.
Well, they were $29.95 for a new CD that was in the charts, right? And that's quite a lot of money, if you're a sort of teenager and you don't have a job and you're relying on pocket money or Christmas birthday presents or whatever.
Well, that must be like $50 now, right? Like in today.
Yeah.
That is a ton of money. Oh my God. I wasted
And if you wanted
album.
a series on VHS of your favourite show, like, Bottom or something like that, you had to buy it in
$29.95.
Yeah, but in two parts, because one tape only had three episodes. You had to buy the other one. So you spent $60 on a 6-part series. Like, fuck me, we were ripped off. Fuck me, moment.
Yeah.
I feel like Mike Moore actually had a good thing going, trying to get this debate off the ground, because we definitely have something to say about it.
I often agree with Mike's ideas. Like, let's do that debate.
See, I think all this talk about the price of CDs is why I was and still continue to be a compilation connoisseur.
CC.
Yeah. Now that's what I call music volume whatever. It's much better value.
Oh yeah.
Well, see,
100% hits.
Well, see, the only one that's still going is So Fresh, and I think it's on its last legs, because the latest one, which came out a couple of weeks ago, there's only 17 tracks on it.
Can't believe that is still going.
It's not as good value as the UK. Now that's what I call music series, which is where you get the double CD and you get about 40 to 50 songs. I've started thinking
you
about
could
jumping
just
ship
listen to
those.
Spotify.
Yeah, Prue's
You
right.
don't have the physical media.
Boo, physical media. I've got it all around the room. I'm sick of it. Look at this shit. Clogging up things.
I don't know. My partner and I still go to Salvos every week and try and get $2 CDs. Anyway. But let's. What Mike points out, it'll be software next, and he's actually got a point there. With all the subscription-based services.
Can I just say on software, Adobe are the biggest jerks, because
when
you try to quit, they say, well, we're going to charge you for the whole year anyway. It's like, no, you can't do that in Australia. Like, that's against the law. And it's just, they're awful. But Mike's right. We need a debate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But old school Photoshop is probably worth a lot more now, because people want to have that one-off copy instead of doing a subscription.
That's what stopped me from buying it, because I don't want to do a subscription.
Yeah,
I'd rather
it
do
was
like a
it was
perpetual
hundreds
license.
of dollars to buy Photoshop back in the day, and now you can get it for a subscription every month or something, which is kind of affordable. And it's always always get upgraded as it gets as they improve it.
If you don't
So-
pay,
Oh, I
you lose
see.
access to it.
Allison
You do.
Adobe. It's in the first initial,
Hey.
isn't it? Here we go.
Yeah.
This debate has started.
I do hate Adobe, but it is better value these days, I think, compared to when you had to buy it back in the day. But anyway, this is maybe another
Gloves are
bit
off.
to cut, Matt.
You just have a separate episode.
Just
Bonus.
all the tangents. Yeah.
Hey, did we ever work out whether Brian was full of it when he was referencing Price's Surveillance Authority? Like, that's not a real
What,
thing,
as
is
in,
it?
does that exist?
Wasn't
the
it just the
PSA.
ACCC? Yeah, the PSA. Like, that's just a load of crap, isn't it?
It feels like
I
an
think
American
so.
thing, Prices and Surveillance Authority or something.
Yeah,
I do think
no.
it was just a name that Brian did make up, because the next thing is that he goes to Emma to ask her to put Price's Surveillance Authority on an old station
Budget
financial
report. Yeah.
Actually,
knowing that Mike will never ever read it.
it is a thing.
And he never does.
Oh, it is a thing.
Yeah, the prices.
Is it?
Or it was a thing, right?
No, I had no idea. It says here that was it pc.gov.au. The Prices Surveillance Authority's mission, or PSA, is to promote price restraint and accountability consistent with competitive market outcomes.
Wow.
They're doing a good job nowadays, aren't they?
Yeah. So that was established before the episode. It wasn't like, oh, let's establish a PSA, kind of like a Utopia episode, where they're like, oh, PSA, let's make that a thing.
Oh, I
Can they
think
please come and do an investigation on my rent? That'll be great.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it says according to treasury.gov.au, the Prices Surveillance Act came in 1983, so it's not that old. Yeah, well, yeah, it's only roughly 40 years old.
Fraser or Hawke brought that in.
Yeah,
Depending on what time
Interesting.
of year.
there you go. So Marty is having the time of his life. Sorry, I say that in quotation marks. Interviewing the accidental heroes, the two bogans who just love getting pissed.
Did you see one of them's wearing a Rodney Rude t-shirt?
Yes.
Yes.
I wonder where they got that from. Their life was it when Boris was talking about all the op shops and how they're trying to find all the costumes and things. I wonder how hard it was to find a Rodney Rude shirt.
Surely it's in like Rob Santo's, wardrobe.
Yeah.
Now, with this, we have that Brooke's chat with the priest isn't as hard-hitting as she thought, and because he doesn't answer properly, like in the whole drastic way, he's actually pretty reasonable with his answers. So with some Hugh magic, the interview is slightly manipulated. Back to Marty's interview with the two bogans, though.
This is take 9. When did you actually realize that the yacht was sinking?
Sorry, mate.
Cut.
It's shonky acting.
Yeah. Now this is where we get a cut scene. Actually, there's a whole very short scene that's cut, and this is about. Well, this shows you how much they're trying to stitch up Father Croft. Okay, so Brooke has got some photos of the rape victim Dominique, or the alleged rape victim, and Father Croft. And so there's a photo of Father Croft with his arm around Dominique and his other arm around her mother. Okay. And Brooke says, this was taken at a youth mass. That's Dominique and her mum. And Brian says, yeah, with the mum, it looks a bit innocent. And then Brooke says, we thought about adjusting the shot just to highlight the two of them. And then she produces a cropped version of the first photo just showing Father Croft with his arm around Dominique. And Brian says, yeah, that's a much better shot. And then we go into Jeff and Mike. So that scene was cut. I guess it probably isn't needed, but I think it's just further kind of highlighting the fact that Frontline are really trying to stitch this guy up, even though they don't really know he did it.
This is one of those storylines that perplex me a little bit, because I don't know whether this would fly today in a current affairs program because of the risk of defamation. The defamation law in Australia is so it's such in favour of the complainant that like the story like this is clear defamation, and the priest and the Catholic Church would have enough fodder to take Frontline to court, and they'd have to pay a massive payout. So this is such a bizarre story. Like, if this came across an editor's desk today, it would be thrown out immediately, because there's no way an editor would or an EP would risk this kind of defamation, unless there is a series of complainants, not just this woman, but a series of other victims along the way who can all point to it. This has got to hold up more than just one person. So it would be, unless there's a series of complaints, then I doubt this would ever get up as a story.
What about it back in the day, like in the early 90s, though? Do you reckon the defamation laws were the same?
I think they were the same. So I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I know right now I'd be saying pass on this story to a journalist that would give that to me.
Yeah, and as the viewer, we see Emma and Marty kind of saying, he hasn't got right of reply. We can't actually do this kind of story without an allegation or a formal police report or anything like that. So there are some kind of, hints that this is definitely unethical back then. But obviously, nowadays, you wouldn't touch it in real life. So
it makes me feel so awkward as a person who's worked in the media to see this happening. I'm like, oh, yuck! This is nasty.
I think the point of the cutscene and also the scene with Brooke and Hugh is that this stuff can happen, and I think it's perhaps pointing out more to the layperson that this sort of thing can happen. Maybe to put it in a Skyhooks-ism, don't you believe what you've seen or you've heard?
This reminds me of a jukebox in Siberia.
Shouting out hysteria. Get down,
it's a horror movie.
All right.
Oh God, I've started something else again, haven't I?
You dropped the Rupel in the slot.
I love that we can all basically remember all of the Jukebox in Siberia lyrics between us. Isn't that amazing too, that we can do that?
God, you're really just taking me back to those Saturday mornings where we all had to sit through that friggin' video clip.
Well, Jeffrey Salter is in his office critiquing his work. Oh, I just love the salt and pepper that's developed on Jeff's head too, by the way.
Yeah.
And he's
very cute.
Yeah, his hair's so neat and stylish. He's critiquing his own work as Mike decides to...
This is funny.
Yeah, I've only got a little snippet of it.
How's that doco going? Oh, come on.
Jan really likes it.
Does
she loves it. Yeah, she's going to show the people upstairs.
I bet she likes it because it's a winner. Urban Foxes.
I thought of a new title.
Tell me, what is it?
Fox, Lies, and Videotape. What do you think?
It's brilliant. It's great.
You really think so?
Because the film, it's a twist on the...
You picked that up, Greg, because I thought it was going to go over people's heads.
I've got to tell you now. I remember what I was going to
I cannot believe I pointed at the wrong city.
I'm talking.
I like the way Santo basically is riffing on that whole thing. Like, it doesn't appear to be in the script book when he admonishes himself and he goes, "What are you doing, Jeffrey Salter? You're talking about Perth and you're pointing at Albany." Like, he's just spinning that out of his ass at the time.
I couldn't imagine any real life with a person critiquing their work, but I could definitely imagine Jeffrey Salter doing that.
Yeah.
Who were the 90s weathermen? Like, obviously there was Stretch.
That was Monty. Monty
They're state-based, though.
Oh, they are, yeah.
Obviously, in Adelaide, we had Ann Wills.
Yep,
and there was Brian Brewery.
Oh, Brian Brewery.
Keith Martin. Keith Martin.
Yep.
And the woman on Channel 10, who was she?
Jane Riley.
Mike Larkham and
Jen Riley
in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's right.
Mike Bailey.
He was there forever.
Tim Bailey in Sydney. Tim Bailey.
Yeah, Tim Bailey, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was all
Who was the
teeth.
bloke in Melbourne who had the wacky pointers? He had like...
No, I think that was Brian Brewery. And he was
Brian Brewery was pretty wacky.
He was Sydney based, yeah.
He was national, though, because he was on the Today Show or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
One of the
But what
breakfast
about
shows.
that guy from All Together Now? Wasn't he a weatherman?
Oh, Stevie Jacobs.
Or was that later?
Stephen Jacobs, and that was later, yeah.
Oh, later.
That was later. I believe Mark Humphries' dad was a weatherman on the ABC.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's before all of our times, though.
Yeah. Well, that explains Mark Humphrey's look immediately. He's got a weatherman look, doesn't he?
He's just very well presented.
That's a compliment.
Yeah. After the stinging teaser promo of the priest, love the effect of the black labeling coming off the
The
eye.
black barb getting peeled off, almost about to reveal him.
Yeah.
But not quite. You have to tune in.
Yeah. So Marty and Emma aren't convinced he's guilty, but Brooke is taking the word of the victim's psychiatrist.
Hey, how's your priest story going? You sewn him up yet?
Oh, just about.
Saw the promo. Wolves in priest's clothing.
That was Brian. Yeah, he wanted to call it priests or pedophiles.
Is this guy, like, actually guilty?
Well, she reckons he is.
Yeah, but this is a sexual abuse thing happened 15 years ago,
We spoke to her psychiatrist. She'd done a lot of work in unlocking hidden memories. Apparently she'd forgotten the whole rape. How do you forget rape? You don't forget rape, you block it out. There's some technical term for it.
Bullshit.
What is this, an inquisition?
But we're accusing this guy tonight on national television. We better make sure that he's guilty.
He is.
Well, why haven't the cops charged?
Look, what is your problem? These guys are creeps. They prey on young girls. You want to let them off the
Yeah,
hook?
we can't sort of set ourselves up as judge and jury.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry, are you both Catholic? That explains everything.
Bit of a burn there.
Says the girl from Genazzano.
So yeah, it suddenly dawns that there's a bit of a divide being drawn based on religion.
I'm crushing more and more on Emma every episode.
Whoa.
Yeah, like...
Unpack that.
No, as in, it's just she's the intelligence. And I think it's more or less the morals that, she's straight up. It's like, you sure about that?
Yeah, definitely Emma is the hero of Frontline.
She's the glue of the station, of the show.
Yeah, I would argue she's the protagonist of the whole series.
Well, she's kind of the moral center as well. Like she's basically the only one who ever raises a moral objection to anything, really.
Yeah, well, for all Mike's naivety, he also has a little bit of a, he's got some morals as well when it comes down to it sometimes.
But they're very easily turned the other way.
This is true,
Mike.
but I think
he
is
goes
very
with the
weak.
wind,
But I think
Mike.
his heart's in the right place. I think.
Yeah.
I'll have you know, he's quite happy to ditch going to the gym to have a debate on the.
Oh, what a sacrifice! What a martyr he is for the cause.
And he'll do the research. He'll read the report.
He'll read the cover. He'll read the cover of the report.
Yeah, that's very in depth though. The cover.
If the Price Surveillance Act had a pull-out poster he could put on his wall, he'd read that.
Yeah.
If they made a Nintendo game out of it for his Game Boy, maybe he'd play it.
I love Mike. He's so great.
Well, Marty shows Brian the result of his Bogan Yacht Heroes.
Jesus, it was fucking pissing down. Wally says, come over to the window. So I come over and he says, have a look out there. I says, I can't see a thing. She's a blind bastard. Well, move. Well, I look again and there's this boat. It's rolled over. I nearly myself. So we get the thing out. It weighs a ton. Then it's pissing down. Pouring.
I swear they spelt cunt in Morse code.
Also, how are we supposed to expect that these guys come from Sandringham in Melbourne? I do not think so. Very posh part of town.
They don't put as much in the swear jar down in Sandringham.
No, not as much.
Mike manages to present Frontline with a broken chair, which that's just.
That is a great visual gag.
Previous episode, or was this set up earlier in the episode? Because I missed this by the time.
No, it was set up earlier in the episode.
This is where it starts.
He fiddles with the chair, and the chair drops, and then he has to sort of sit up on his haunches, because when it goes live.
And the victim Dominique's story does go to air. But back in the office, and the staff are torn on who is telling the truth.
What if he didn't?
Oh, here we go.
Oh, look, what if this Dominique was lying, or maybe she was just wrong?
She went to a psychiatrist, a professional, and he brought out all his repressed memories.
I read about that. This woman in America remembered she was like touched and stuff by Dad when she was 8, and she didn't remember it until she went to this psychiatrist 20 years later, and then she remembered.
Yeah, and then it was discovered that it never actually happened, and that this so-called psychiatrist had just planted the whole thing in her head.
I don't remember that bit.
So Dom is more like a human Facebook share button. Or a retweet.
I think she represents the audience, right? She kind of represents like the viewer, right?
Yeah.
She's, I don't remember that bit.
But Brian tells Emma that the interview with Shirl is to go ahead. The next day, Marty is stealing from the charity chocolate box, naughty, and reveals that he sabotaged Mike's chair. So there's that whole thing. But I'd say that he only did that.
Set up, payoff.
Yeah, to get back because Mike tried to do the prank as well, with the fly spray.
Ah.
But don't forget, there was also that bit where Mike is also doing the crossword and says the popular host of Frontline or person, 5 words.
Starts with M.
Starts with M.
And let me tell you, it's not Marty. Oh, it is Marty.
So, and Mike is on 3AW talking with Neil Mitchell, and cops are grilling over the priest story.
Wait a second, Neil. There is community concern there, especially from the women who themselves have been the victims of this sort of abuse.
Look, I'm sure there is, but there's also deep community concern about current affairs shows setting themselves up as judge and jury.
What's with this judge and jury thing?
That's twice that the name of the episode has been mentioned.
It's like Yes Minister in that respect.
Yeah.
No one got that, but trust me, if the phrase...
It's there.
Yes Minister fans will be pissing themselves right now.
They absolutely will.
I think it's interesting to note that in this, it's fascinating that, Neil Mitchell is still a fixture on air.
Yes.
In Melbourne, right?
Yeah.
And many of these characters and these archetypes have kind of disappeared, particularly in commercial current affairs, but radio still kind of holds. Neil Mitchell is still kind of that presence in that city as that kind of voice. And who's doing it now? Like who are those names that? Who's the new Neil Mitchell? It's like it's kind of
there's relics that are dying out. We don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. In '94, Neil Mitchell wasn't what he is today. It takes years to become a shock jock. You cannot. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. That kind of thing. And he is kind of a detestable shock jock.
He didn't have
now.
he didn't have that same kind of profile that he does now.
Yeah, no way.
Wow,
He was just another voice on the radio, and probably I don't imagine that Working Dog would dare touch someone like Neil Mitchell now because he's so gross. I don't know. I just feel like.
Well, I'm also thinking about that divide between Sydney and Melbourne talk radio. I don't think that Mike Moore would last a second in front of a John Laws or a Ray Hadley or even today Ben Fordham. They're like it's a much more aggressive kind of radio in Sydney.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like it's interesting because we find out later that this is a paid spot. The network is paying.
Yeah.
To
That's
have
kind of the
Mike
key,
Moore
isn't
there.
it?
And it's kind of interesting. Like, and as a Sydney-sider, this is how I found out about Neil Mitchell. This is how I knew who Neil Mitchell was from Frontline. So I guess in my head, I'm like, oh, this is an important radio guy in Melbourne, and he's a person with gravitas talking to Mike, and I really enjoyed that real world kind of interaction.
I am on the same wavelength as you with that, Dan, because we would have dealt with Stan Zemanek and Ron Casey of the day in the 90s, yeah. So, and obviously John Laws, but yeah, because we're all Sydney people, Neil Mitchell was who is he until we watch Frontline, and then it's like, okay, so he must be some type of name over the border, but that's it. In Sydney, no idea who he is.
Yeah. Interesting though, like are these shock jocks in Sydney, are they on the AM or the FM band?
AM.
Definitely AM.
Yeah. Oh, it's all AM, right.
I mean, the only one you could even remotely consider a shock jock on FM would be Kyle Sandilands, and even then, it's a different type of radio.
Really. Yeah, it's just like for our generation, if you listen to AM, you were such a grandma. Like, you know what I mean? None of us had it on.
Yeah, it literally was your grandparents or maybe your parents who listened to AM radio.
Yeah, it was like my dad in the car, who was an older dad, listening to John Laws all the time, and people calling in about their plants. So that was pretty much it.
And the urban foxes.
Yeah.
And winning tickets to the
Oh,
Chelsea
God.
Flower Show.
The Saturday morning gardening program on ABC Radio was just what my dad would always listen to in the 90s. Yeah.
Absolutely. My grandparents had that on.
How to pickle your fruit.
Yeah, that was the kind of thing that my dad would be into.
It was healthy, wealthy, and wise in radio format.
It was. And but you could call in with your plant problems.
Oh my
You know,
God.
oh, my roses are drooping. What do I do?
I mean, thank God we got YouTube now to fix this for us, so we don't have to worry. We didn't have to be around at 8 o'clock on a Saturday to call someone to find out. We get to
My
do it.
dad's
It'd be
my
great.
dad's not going on YouTube. He's still listening to the radio program on the Saturday morning. I assume it still exists. Maybe
wow.
Daniel can help me out. Is there still a gardening show on Adelaide radio on a Saturday morning?
I'm not quite sure about. They'd have to be on the ABC, but I wouldn't really know.
Yeah, the ABC Adelaide.
I'm more tuned into the only commercial talk station in Adelaide, 5AA, and yeah, there's still Michael Keelan on a Saturday doing gardening. Yeah.
And you don't listen to our old mates Simon Owens and Phil Brady on 3AW?
I do, but usually on a Monday morning, like afterwards, via podcast. Podcasting is where it's at, really. Like that's where talk radio is still alive and well.
Yeah.
The late night call-in podcast.
Yeah, Sizzletown. You listen to that.
That's a great.
I think what's interesting. I think my point here is that it's interesting that in radio the chairs haven't moved very much, and
yeah,
still the same bums in the same chairs, and seems to be a weird medium where people get a seat and they don't move.
It's that a news reading, isn't it? Because if you get a job as a newsreader, you've basically got it for life. And I discovered recently that a newsreader that I used to watch, ever since I was a kid in Adelaide, has now retired, and his son's got the slot. So it's kind of like
funny.
Oh yes, Will Gooding's son of Graham Gooding.
Yes, indeed,
who is also on the breakfast slot on 5AA.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and also, what's his name? Well, Goodings was the inspiration for one of those characters that they did on Full Frontal, written by Sean McAuliffe. They had the news segment with Kitty Flanagan and John. What's his name? And one of them had the surname Goodings, which was inspired by Graham Goodings.
Oh,
so it all links, guys. I'm
that.
trying to desperately bring this back to comedy here.
With John Walker doing Ian Goodings.
Ian Goodings,
John
that's
Walker.
right.
Ian
That's the
Gooding,
one.
yeah.
Just wanted to ask, because obviously Mike didn't know it was a paid slot, and I just wanted how prevalent that is in radio and other media today. Because from what I understood, businesses have to really disclose any kind of commercial dealings, especially like if you've got Instagram influencers saying, "Oh, this is a paid slot" and that sort of thing. Mike didn't even know himself that it was a paid slot. Is this something that has to happen nowadays?
Yeah, so it was a really, really murky territory in the 90s, and you didn't really have to. This is where the whole cash for comment thing came from with Alan Jones and a bunch of other broadcasters. But now it's kind of a different arrangement. So when you look at commercial radio and you see these kind of these connections, you would have the major commercial radio stations in Australia. Some are owned by Channel 9, and you would never have a Channel 7 broadcaster do a spot like this on a Channel 9 owned radio show. So it would be very unlikely that there would be a different network on, unless there was a commercial arrangement between those two networks. But I think now you're more likely to have 9 broadcasters who are from the telly go on 9 radio stations in the metro areas, and that's kind of how that relationship would work. So you'd never have another kind of reporter, unless the reporter was covering a beat that wasn't covered by anywhere else, or they had an exclusive. It would be very rare to see that person on that radio station if there wasn't like a connection.
Yeah, again, bringing it into a local example for me. Yeah, Will Goodings reads the news on Channel 7. And it used to be that Channel 9 would provide like a half-hour midday news bulletin for the radio station 5AA, but just recently that contract has mutually ended, and it's now Channel 7 providing a half-hour bulletin for the radio. You're starting to see that, yeah, it's starting to just be Channel 7 people that are coming through 5AA. It's sort of, there's nothing, set in stone about it, but it seems to be some sort of unwritten arrangement. But at least with the Frontline example, at least Neil Mitchell's having a go at Mike Moore, even though it's a paid spot. That's the only sort of bit that doesn't seem very plausible to me. You would think that if it's Frontline paying for airtime on 3AW, Neil Mitchell might go a bit easy.
But Neil Mitchell's got to pretend to look like a journalist as well. So he's got to pretend to kind of keep his kind of journalistic credentials in check and be the devil's advocate, And I've been interviewed by Neil Mitchell, and you can tell that a lot of these broadcasters aren't actually listening to what they're saying when they're saying. They're just kind of thinking of the next thing to say. So it's one of those things where, in this circumstance, there's a clear script, and he's being Neil Mitchell with great dialogue, probably written by Working Dog for him to say.
Because this is a Working Dog device where they often take someone from real life who's got a profile that we'll all understand and relate to, and then they'll make them sort of cleverer. They'll be the champion of the joke, like what they did with John Hewis. What was his name?
Hewson.
Hewson, yeah. You know how they made him sort of like a bit of a star of the scene? Like he had the gag and he had the punchline, and Neil Mitchell sort of got the upper hand here. And so this is a sort of a classic Working Dog thing that they often do. That's great. It's funny.
It's great. I think it's a really powerful device. It's great. I love it.
And then the scene just closes out with, call us now if you agreed with the Frontline story. Oh, we don't seem to have any callers until somebody who sounds very much like Domenica calls in.
After Emma feeling bad for Mike getting grilled on 3AW and eventually finds out it's actually a paid spot, Brooke reads out the newspaper article over the pre-story, and Mike gets upset about the 3AW grilling, threatening to walk. Yeah, that's a smart move, mate. But Kate gets an off-screen call from the church as well, so hold on to your hats for that one. In the studio, though, Mike is getting ready to debate the CD prices with Shirl and the guy from the PSA to have that nice debate, but someone doesn't turn up. Oh, damn, what do we do? So it ends up being turned into an interview.
Joining us now on Frontline, a man who's gone from living in the 70s to swinging a hammer in the 90s. Skyhook's lead singer, Shirley Strawn. And Shirl, tell us about the new single.
Well, it's called The Happy Hippie Hut, and it's to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Skyhooks.
And this is it here now.
The late great Shirl.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to know what the top? Does anyone want to know what the top chart position for the Happy Hippie Hut was? I looked it up.
Yeah, me too. But I'll let you say it, Alison.
Oh, hang on. Was this a real song? I assumed
it's
it was
a real song.
Yeah.
In fact,
oh my God!
It's got a Wikipedia page for it.
Yeah,
what are you thinking calling it that?
All right, here we go.
I can just imagine this on Hey Hey It's Saturday.
Oh, the Late Show has 4.5 minutes of shit.
It was 3 minutes 45.
So okay,
that's a terrible song.
Yeah, now, actually, coincidentally, if you do look up this song on YouTube, there is a Hey Hey performance.
Oh my
I am
God.
in no way surprised by that.
But I think you've got a lot to say about this song. Again from the Wikipedia page. So I'll let you take it away, Alison.
I don't really. I think the key point here is that the chart position that it reached. It was actually okay. All right, it was a double A side with Daddy Cool, and their song on it was The Ballad of and the song peaked at number 35. So let's just say that even the combined, skills of
the star power
and Daddy Cool, the star power, combined star power, they only got to 35 with Happy Hippie Hut
And
The
this
Ballad of Oz.
apparently this was
yeah, exactly.
Apparently this was for a proposed stadium tour between Skyhooks and Daddy Cool, which was later downgraded to the pub circuit. Judging by that, it was number 35 for 3 weeks and then dropped out.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Godinsky was a legend, but some of his ideas were cocoa bananas.
Now
So
also, you go on. Sorry.
So this was a real plug, it seems, because I just looked up the Wikipedia page and it was launched in August '94, and this Frontline episode was end of July. So this plug actually was a plug. Unfortunately, not as successful as he would have liked.
Once again, who says you can't advertise on the ABC?
It's a bit dodgy, isn't it? Now there's another cut scene that I'll just mention very, very quickly, and it's not really a particularly interesting scene, apart from it's got kind of a Late Show gag in it. So just before Mike starts to interview Shirl, he says to Shirl, "You know what my all-time favorite Skyhook song is?" And then Shirl says, "What?" And Mike's answer, "Jump in my car." And Shirl goes, "Right."
Yeah. At the old street interview, real estate agent.
That's the one.
There is a Skyhook song that they could have easily have gone with, but there are legit reasons why it didn't, because they could have gone and played this song.
That one didn't get a lot of airtime in my day.
This is the slightly dispiriting thing, and it was sort of demonstrated by that intro by Mike, living in the 70s to swinging the hammer in the 90s, is that, this was a band that, did songs like that one and that other one about getting a bit of hand relief at the movies in a Twisties bag.
Yes, smart, yeah.
And then, suddenly going to, Jukebox in Siberia and Happy Hippie Heart, and
it's quite the journey, isn't it?
Yeah, they've really mellowed out.
And you're forgetting Tall Timber, which was a song about forests. You know, don't cut down the tall timber. It was about deforestation and stuff.
Which seems very ironic considering Shell's chippy,
I think when you turn, 38 is probably when you stop giving people hand jobs in a twisty bag. So
was that when you stopped? Or?
It depends. Cheese, absolutely.
Yeah.
Chicken, probably 39, 40.
Yeah.
Chicken
I'm 41 now, so all that is behind me.
From that lovely bit of hilarity to the next scene, which is a nice little, dare I say, fuck me moment. There we go. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, it was, because Mike does walk into a somber office and the priest has committed suicide.
But he's thankful he hasn't been axed.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that Mike's like, "Oh, has the show been axed?" And then he's like,
"Yeah,
I've been axed."
"Oh, phew."
And it's like, "Oh, it's just the priest committed suicide." Yeah, whatever. Good.
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, I felt uncomfortable about that story. I was wrong. Yeah, I knew that I was right about that all along."
It's all Brooke's fault. We don't have anything to do with it. Don't worry about it. Yeah, while Brooke is dealing with that, I guess, Brian decides to get the victim, Dominique, into the studio for a live interview. And
well, thanks for coming in at such short notice, Dominique.
My therapist says it's a good idea. The more I talk about the incidents, the more I neutralise the effects.
I would assume so.
And in 5,
I'll just wait.
4.
Yep. Did you hear
3,
Shell fix the chair too?
2.
You got the. We're on.
But without playing the final bit, turns out that she's a bit of a loose cannon.
She's turning out to be perhaps a not so reliable witness. To sort of to give her the benefit of the doubt.
Why are we being coy about this? What, she literally goes on air and says that she was raped and impregnated by aliens. And then it's like, okay, we'll just leave that interview there. Coming up next on Frontline.
Yeah.
Pretty smooth move by Mike, wasn't it? It was like, and
it's
off
a
we go.
very quickly segued away from her.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this wouldn't happen at all in a current affairs show.
I doubt it would.
This talent would have been pre-recorded 100% for sure,
Yeah.
for defamation purposes mainly. But even if they did decide to do a live interview, she would have done a pre-interview with a producer before, and the producer would have known whether that talent was unstable or unsafe to have her. And as a victim, she'd probably be very unsafe to have on live TV. That's a very that's not a ethical thing to do, or as in a duty of care kind of space from a broadcaster.
But from a defamation point, he's already dead. So do you think it could still potentially have happened live?
Oh yeah. Well, he's dead, so it doesn't matter.
She
you
might
can't
defame
defame
someone
who's
else,
dead.
though, I suppose.
She might defame somebody else.
Like the aliens.
Those aliens could sue.
Yeah.
Don't forget, she's pregnant with Shell's baby too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
With this whole time, like Brooke, we kind of the viewer doesn't see this coming, or maybe they do, but all the manipulation that they do of the footage and all the the fact that Brooke is saying we can do all of this stuff, or we can do all of this stuff to the footage, and the guy deserves it. He's done all of this, all these liberties that they're taking, and as the viewer, we kind of think, oh yeah, maybe that's fair because this guy's did what he did, and then we realize at the very end this whole twist. So yeah, it's very clever.
Maybe he is innocent, and in that case, that puts a heck of a lot of blood on the hands.
Yeah, Frontline are the baddies. Yeah.
But sorry to put the serious hat on here. Even though they went live with Dominique, wouldn't you think that they have learnt their lesson when Mike was on the phone during the siege?
Yeah, there's a little bit of repetitiousness, isn't there?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they didn't do 13 episodes in a series again.
But also, have you guys done Desert Angel yet?
Yes.
Yeah, the stuttering lady as well.
The stuttering lady is the same joke.
Yes. Yep.
I don't know though. I mean, in this era of comedy, that it was kind of like a cartoon in the sense that it resets again at the start of every episode. There is less of this idea of having a character evolve over a program. That's more common in comedy now, but not at that time.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying at the start, Dan, about how the punchiness of having a 26-minute episode, in a way, I'm glad we've evolved a little bit, because it's more like we expect now strong characters that we can understand. They've got a backstory. There's less of that kind of cookie cutterness, or what do you call it? Like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Stock character.
Homogenized?
Yeah, or like
stencil.
I don't know. Yeah, like that. Like,
try and articulate what you're feeling without insulting the work of Working Dog.
Prue, are you talking about like a stock character where you've got like the dumb secretary, or you've got the kind of, I don't know,
or that sort of, it's like a pattern of how a show should be, and there was lots of that at the time. It was like, followed a pattern. Formula, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for.
Or a standard structure or something. You see, I don't know. I kind of disagree, because I feel like a lot of TV now, there's an A plot and there's a B plot and there's a C plot, and you just sort of, and you can see stuff coming just a mile ahead. You just go, oh no, in episode 5, there'll be some big crisis, like some major character will die, and there have been so many programs recently that I've watched where that's so obviously going to happen, and then it literally does, and you think, well, what's the point of watching that if you know what's happening?
You got to try and have that shock value in these days anyway for that. Otherwise, well, actually, no, you're right, Alison. You've spot on there, because what's the point? You lose interest in it.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm giving up on comedy. I'm never doing it again. It's terrible.
Don't do it. Don't do a Judith Lucy.
It's a hard game, comedy, I imagine.
Yeah.
On that note.
On that note, yeah. That concludes Frontline Season 1, Episode 12, and the Champagne Comedy Podcast, Episode 52. I was going to point out, though, that in the credits, Tom Gleisner's name's on it, and Colin Conacher. Did not see Colin Conacher at all in the episode.
Yeah, I never seemed to see him.
Yeah, never saw him. We didn't have an Elliot either, which was a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
So I always enjoy Elliot.
Yeah. Feel free to reach out to us, email champagnelateshow@gmail.com, and check this episode's show notes for all our socials, because I'm sure by the time that this episode gets released, there's probably another 5 more socials I have to bloody register. Yeah.
And can I say I was in the ABC foyer a couple of weeks ago, and I bumped into James Valentine. I was told Matthew this already, but James Valentine, I mentioned this podcast to him. I'm like, James, there's this podcast. They do recaps of the Late Show, and they use a lot of TV. He's like, oh, I've got some great stories about TV. So I think you should get James
Oh,
Valentine
we
as your next celebrity
we
guest
should get
on
him
this
on.
podcast.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I'm
he's
such a fan of that show.
He's really good, and he's pretty accessible on Twitter. And reach out to him, see if he's up for it, because I reckon he'd be a great guest with a bunch of good stories, particularly not only about Frontline but also working behind the scenes on TV.
Well, thank you,
That'd be
Dan.
awesome.
And there you go. It's now in the podcast, so I'll now have to follow it up. Damn it! get the Tony Martin impersonator on the podcast straight away. Stat. So. And also Facebook search Champagne Comedy Podcast Group and Redbubble, where we try to raise money for this podcast. So far, we've still got one sale. Hooray. And that was Prue. So, oh, and also Tim who bought a pedantry coffee mug, and someone else who has bought a Bus Trip the Barrel # t-shirt. So thank you as always to Alison, Daniel, Kim. I've got to buy one for myself, and Prue. And
now,
sorry.
Yeah, I think I did this last episode. Are you about to give Dan a chance to plug?
Yes.
if the Shirley Strawn interview has taught us anything, it's that interviews are a symbiotic relationship. We need Dan for the guest spot, and he's got something to plug.
Yes.
Yeah. So Dan, when is your version of Happy Hippie Hut coming out?
No, I mean, I've got nothing to plug. Don't worry about it. No, I'll give this one a free. Here's a free one. Fill it in. Fill with it. I don't know. What do you want? I mean, I've got a podcast. You can listen to it if you want. It's won awards. No big deal. If you do have any listeners in the Torres Strait, we're going to be doing a Torres Strait show of Irrational Fear with Dane Simpson, Lewis Hobber, a couple of other Torres Strait Islander comedians as well, to support The Voice coming up September 18. And also, if you're in Sydney on September 9, we're going to be doing a live recording of our show as well at the Women in Media Conference. Yes, 2 men, me and Lewis, with a podcast, are doing a show at the Women in Media Conference. It's purely out of diversity that we're there. We're very privileged to be there. And we've got Nayuka Gori on stage. We've got Nina Oyama on stage, Hannah Ferguson from Cheek Media on stage with us, and also Vijay Rajan from Auntie Donna's Coffee Cafe is also on stage with us as well. So we've got some really excellent, funny women on stage with us. So that's September 9th. And, Irrational Fear wherever you download your podcasts.
Right. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate you coming back on and being patient.
Hey, I love
us.
the podcast. I'm a listener.
Thank you. We do have.
Yeah, it was great to hear you talking about media a bit more.
Oh,
rather than just all the comedy side of things when you were here for the Late Show.
Well, the thing is, I kind of my career strand is kind of journalism and comedy at the same time. So whether it's working for the Feed or Hungry Beast, before then in between Ronnie Johns and Hungry Beast, I worked as a video journalist for Fairfax. So I was in making big decisions, breaking news. I broke the story of Heath, what's his name? Heath Ledger passing away. Yeah, when I was in New York with Brad Blanks. And so we kind of scooped the world on that. And I've done reporting from all around Australia. I've hitchhiked from Hobart to Airlie Beach for the election. I've done video diaries from Afghanistan while doing comedy for Fairfax and stuff like that as well. So in this space, I'm kind of uniquely suited to kind of talk about it. So yeah, and when you're the executive producer and showrunner of TV shows like Tonightly, that's a particularly interesting seat to have, because you do span news and comedy at the same time, and those kind of questions that Brian would be facing every day, I could really relate to. And he is much more laissez-faire and much more chill about things than me. But the pressure of that job is a lot is quite immense. And I wish I was a bit more like Brian, in that I could kind of treat people's egos in a way that I could get the best out of them, like let them come to the decision. Whereas I'm a bit more authoritarian in my leadership style. I'll be like, Mike, you do the interview. Let's move on. Or like working with someone like Tom Ballard as well with Tonightly, that was a very much a co-managing relationship where we would fight, to kind of get different ideas across, and would very much respect each other to kind of get things across. And when the network needed stuff done, I had to be the bad guy to tell Tom to do the stuff that the network wanted him to do. So there was, there's things in that character that I can absolutely see, but Brian does it in such a beautiful way where he can emotionally manipulate Mike into doing stuff, and the rest of his stuff. He knows what each of those characters wants, and he knows the carrot to dangle in front of them to get the most out of those, get the most out of that team. And I think that's the kind of psychopath that needs to run a show like that.
Yeah.
Whereas, I'm a bit more collegial, but also when stuff needs to happen, we just need to tick the boxes for the masters at hand, which is the network. So yeah, it's a unique position where I've had to be.
Well, make sure you keep wearing that hat because you'll earn so much respect with the Late Show hat, the original.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've had this one since I was about 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Well, that belongs in a museum or a pool room.
Yeah, we should start collecting for the Late Show Museum. Charge entry.
Oh, goodness gracious, yeah. We've got to start doing that. All right, have a great time, everyone, and we'll see you next episode. I'm Matt. Catch you next time. Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to the Champagne Comedy Podcast, created by fans for the fans. For more information on this podcast, please visit champagnecomedy.com. Produced by Matt Fulton Productions, mattfulton.com.au.